So now is the time to do that before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold. You won't regret it.
And dreams without goals are just dreams.
Come on.
And ultimately, they fuel disappointment.
Exactly.
On the road to achieving your dreams, you must apply discipline, but more importantly, consistency. Because without commitment, you'll never start, but without consistency, you'll never finish. So the position I have, the money I have, the stardom I have, the joy that or pain or whatever I've given to people through the films that I've done don't make me any better. Leave room to learn.
Well, because it's anything to do with software is a low capital endeavor. So I didn't have any money. I just had a bunch of student debt. But software you can just write like by yourself, and you don't need a lot of atoms. Like you don't need a lot of tooling and equipment, and so it's not capital intensive. So the ability to start a company, if it's software related, and it's the first company, is much easier.
Right. And it seems obvious now, but of course the easier place to start, and then as you gain more of a personal reputation and have more personal capital, as some may or may not know, SpaceX was entirely funded by Elon for its first period, partially from, and in an era when others probably wouldn't have funded it, right, in those early days.
It was really to try to show that what electric cars can do, because people had the wrong impression. We had to change people's perception of an electric vehicle, because they used to think of it as something that was slow and ugly and had low range, kind of like a golf cart. So that's why we created the Tesla Roadster, to show that you can be fast, attractive, and long range. And it's amazing how, even though you can show that something works on paper, and the calculations are very clear, until you actually have the physical object and they can drive it, it doesn't really sink in for people. And so that I think is something worth noting. If you're going to create a company, the first thing you should try to do is create a working prototype. Everything looks great on PowerPoint. you can make anything work on PowerPoint. But if you have an actual demonstration article, even if it's in primitive form, that's much more effective for convincing people.
One of the lessons in entrepreneurship is that you don't have to be the best, but you have to be dangerous, right? You have to learn just enough to be dangerous to build an idea, concept it, and show it to the world. And then it turns out there are lots of other people, including all 170 employees that work at Instagram, who are much better at doing all that stuff than I am. But you need to find people who can, be drawn to the idea that you build, and then they end up taking it and making it even better.
Area that you get into, given that even if you're the best, there's always a chance of failure. So I think it's important that you really like whatever you're doing. If you don't like it, life is too short.
Number 3, I'd say, is constantly seek criticism. A well thought out critique of whatever you're doing is as valuable as gold. And you should seek that from everyone you can, but particularly your friends. Usually your friends know what's wrong, but they don't want to tell you because they don't want to hurt you. So
Lift you up, sort of.
so they'll say, "Oh, I would encourage my friend, so I'm not going to tell him what I think is wrong with his product."
Yeah.
It doesn't mean your friends are right, but very often they are right, and you at least want to listen very carefully to what they say. And to everyone, you're looking for, basically, you should take the approach that you're wrong.
Another strength, I think, is that in businesses, you can never give up. I mean, you have to keep going forward. They're afraid of personal failure. They're afraid of rejection. It's the fear of failure, I think, that keeps most people from doing the things in life.
I think maybe it's helpful to say one of the things that was important then in the creation of PayPal was kind of how it started, because initially the initial thought was with PayPal was to create an agglomeration of financial services, so to have one place where all your financial services needs would be seamlessly integrated, and work smoothly. And then we had like a little feature which was to do email payments. And whenever we'd show the system off to someone, we'd show the hard part, which was the agglomeration of financial services, which was quite difficult to put together. Nobody was interested. Then we'd show people email payments, which was actually quite easy, and everybody was interested. This is, I think it's important to take feedback from your environment. You want to be as closed loop as possible. So we focused on email payments and really try to make that work, and that's what really got things to take off. But if we hadn't responded to what people said, then we probably would not have been successful. So it's important to look for things like that and focus on them when you see them, and you correct your prior assumptions.
But if it was a good idea, then even when they were terribly implemented, customers immediately said, this is a good idea. And they would try to get their way to order it. They'd call us, they'd email, they'd reboot the site 4 or 5 times. And then we knew exactly what to fix. You see, the insight that came from all that was that it wasn't about having good ideas. It was all about building a system and a culture that let us try lots of bad ones.
I try to get as much critical feedback as possible from friends, and you have to coax it out of them, because they'll be reluctant to say it because they don't want to hurt you, but they know what's wrong with your product. You need to get it out of them. But it is generally true that innovation comes from questioning the way things have been done before.
Yeah.
And if in the education system you're taught not to do that, that will inhibit entrepreneurship.
Something you see in Silicon Valley, that there's no fear of failure, but culturally in this part of the world,
true. No, I think there's fear of failure. I certainly have fear of failure.
But it didn't stop you.
No.
Elon, can I ask you about that one message to that potential entrepreneur waiting to make the jump?
Well, certainly, I think people should ignore fear if it's irrational, and even if it's rational and the stake is worth it, it's still worth proceeding. What are the range of probable outcomes? Outcomes are usually not deterministic; they're a range, and so you want to figure out what those probabilities are, and make sure, ideally, that you're the house. It's fine to gamble so long as you're the house.
Yeah.
But I do think that one great thing about Silicon Valley is failure is not a big stigma. So it's like if you try hard and it doesn't work out, that's okay. Like you can learn from that and do another company, and it's not a big deal. And I think that's really one of the great things about Silicon Valley.
And then I think that the final thing I would encourage you to do is, now is the time to take risk. You don't have kids. Your obligation. Well, sorry, probably don't have kids. But as you get older, your obligations increase. So and once you have a family, you start taking risk not just for yourself but for your family as well. It gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now is the time to do that before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold. You won't regret it.
So in order to have a great company, you've got to focus your energies on a particular area. Something that Steve Jobs was that I think was quite admirable was he was ultra product focused, like down to the little detail. He and other people at Apple would really try hard to have these, both at a high level and a small level, these delightful things happen. So that the product was just made you happy. What we aspire to do is to make the car so compelling that even with low gasoline prices, it's still the car you want to buy.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of that's the only sort of what else we could do, really.
You have to make it compelling.
You know, advice I'd give to people starting companies, to entrepreneurs in general, is really focus on making a product that your customers love. It's so rare that you can buy a product and you love the product when you bought it. There are very few things that fit into that category. And if you can come up with something like that, your business will be successful for sure. I mean, as long as people stay super focused on creating an absolute best product or service that really delights their end customer, if they stay focused on that, then if you get it such that your customers want you to succeed, then you probably will.
Right. You have to focus on the customer and delivering for them.
Yeah. Make sure if your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher.
And you will sell this stuff by accident, because everybody you know either needs or wants the product you have. It's not like you're selling things that they don't care about. You know, you're not trying to sell them a Rolls Royce. You're trying to sell them the Rolls Royce in the food supplement field. But you're selling them a product that's in their touch and in their range. So anybody you talk to has a potential or a latent interest in what you're talking about.
I think really an obsessive nature with respect to the quality of the product it is very important. So being obsessive compulsive is a good thing in this context. I'd say focus on signal over noise. A lot of companies get confused. They spend money on things that don't actually make the product better. So, for example, at Tesla, we've never spent any money on advertising. We put all of the money into R&D and manufacturing and design to try to make the car as good as possible. I think that's the way to go. So for any given company, just keep thinking about, are these efforts that people are expending, are they resulting in a better product or service? And if they're not, stop those efforts.
At Google, entrepreneurship is in our DNA. Google was founded here at Stanford, and the company's first home was in a garage just a couple miles from here. Like many of you in the audience, our founders were two young people with a vision of a better future, a better way, and they decided to follow their dreams. We now live on our own campus down the road and in dozens of countries, but the spirit continues. In fact, our most popular products almost all began as big ideas that small entrepreneurial teams dreamed up and made happen.
I think a lot of people think I must spend a lot of time with media or on businessy things, but actually almost all my time, like 80% of it is spent on engineering and design. So it's developing next generation product. That's 80% of it. A lot of times, an entrepreneur will come up with something which is only slightly better, and it's not. It can't just be slightly better. It's got to be a lot better. To make sure that whatever you're doing is a great product or service. It has to be really great. If you're a new company, unless it's like some new industry or new market that, if it's an untapped market, then you have more ability to. The standard is lower for your product or service. But if you're entering anything where there's an existing marketplace against large entrenched competitors, then your product or service needs to be much better than theirs. It can't be a little bit better, because then you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and they say, why would you buy it as a consumer? You're always going to buy the trusted brand unless there's a big difference.
I say give the internet a chance. People all around the world will respond. It's one of the most powerful and wonderful things about it. Break outside of your friends list and join a community of internet strangers. You'll be surprised at what they're capable of, what you will learn, and how it will change you. And I think that's an idea worth spreading.
I think that the most important thing for creating companies is you need a concentration of talent. It's like creating think of like a world sports team or something. You really want to focus your talent on a particular area, and that's what a company is. It's a group of people that got together to create a product or service.
I know nothing about technology. I know nothing about management. I know nothing about, but the only thing is that you don't have to know a lot of things. You have to find the people who are smarter than you are. My first way is always find people who knowledge on computer smarter than I am. Accounting, smarter. For so many years, I always try to find the people smarter than I am. And when you find so many smart people, my job is to make sure the smart people can work it together. And then if smart people can work it together, it's easier. The vision will believe.
Sure that from a regulatory standpoint, and from its, in terms of regulations and taxation and government support, that it's there for startup companies, and that it goes from startup all the way through the medium phase of the company. Because where most companies tend to not make it is not so much at that very beginning stage, it's that intermediate stage. So they'll can they sort of reach escape velocity as a company, and when a new company is formed, and you're going up against established, big established companies, you're trying to build some kind of credibility, and it's incredibly important that companies are nurtured through that phase. I mean, it's just like a little sapling growing in a redwood forest. You know, you've got these giant companies. If you don't get a little bit of sunlight and nutrition, it's game over. There's a friend of mine who's got a great saying about creating a company. Trying to build a company and have it succeed is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Oh. So, I mean, what tends to happen is it's sort of quite exciting for the first several months of starting a company, and then reality sets in. Things don't go as well as planned. Customers aren't signing up. The technology or the product isn't working as well as you thought. And then that can sometimes be compounded by a recession, and it can be very, very painful for several years. Frankly, starting a company, I would advise people to have a high pain tolerance.
Do you fear that maybe in this generation or the younger generation that they don't have that perseverance and grit to take on these really tough challenges?
I think some people do, and but no, I think it is definitely true that, I mean, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain, but I'm not aware of very many of such instances. So, but I do think that new great entrepreneurs are born every day, and we'll continue to see amazing companies get built. Yeah, but I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty.
No doesn't actually mean no. Right. You know, in business or pitching shows, it doesn't. It just means that person at that moment doesn't share the vision. Right. And, you can't be put off. But look what you've done in your career, man. I mean, it's not easy. You've got to keep going and believe in yourself all the time.
The most common hiring mistake was weighing too much on someone's talent and not on someone's personality. And then I think it matters whether someone has a good heart.
It does, yes, absolutely. So that's generally where, if I say where sort of the hiring mistakes that I've made in the past, it's been just as I said, it's looking too much at their intellectual capability alone, and not on how they affect those around them. What really matters is for someone's contribution to a company is how they are as an individual and how they affect others around them. I mean, you could say it's also analogous to a sports team. If someone, the best person on the team is not necessarily the one who scores the most goals. It could be the person who assists in the most goals. And if somebody if there's one person on the team who's just wants the ball all the time and just wants to kick it at the goal, that can actually be detrimental. So it is important to weigh personality and just are they going to be a good person, and will people like working with them and that kind of thing. It does make a difference. If you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company.
So my idea was create a business, and that way you can have true sustainability, and we've proven that works. And I'm dedicating my life to convincing people that you don't have to start a charity to really help people. You can actually start a business and help far more people.
Creating a company, what Edison said, which was like it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, is true. You have to work super hard, and that's very important. I think certainly extremely tenacious, and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. And then
a lot of work.
All those things improve the odds of success.
Okay.
I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve. Depending on how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she'd have to sleep in the office. So work hard, every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, you say okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. Well, we don't think too much about what competitors are doing.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's important to be just focused on making the best possible products. It's sort of maybe analogous to what they say about if you're in a race.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what the other runners are doing.
Yeah.
Just run.
Yeah.
The goal of Tesla from the beginning has been to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. So we actually did some partnerships. We did one with Mercedes and one with Toyota, and open source IP and everything. So the whole purpose of it was really to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. So it's always great to hear when other car companies are making electric cars.
Third failure in a row. Did you think, I need to pack this in?
No.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated. And one does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have the worst you have a filter for the crappiest problems in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. There's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company, because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So, that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time. I mean, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain, but I'm not aware of very many such instances. I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty.
Yep.
I'd say starting a business is not for everyone. Generally, starting a business, I'd say number one is have a high pain threshold. That's it. There's a friend of mine who's got a good saying, which is that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. That's generally what happens, because when you first start a company, there's lots of optimism and things are great. And then so happiness at first is high. Then you encounter all sorts of issues, and happiness will steadily decline. And then you'll go through a whole world of hurt. And then eventually, if you succeed, and in most cases you will not succeed, and Tesla almost didn't succeed, came very close to failure. Then if you succeed, then after a long time, you will finally get back to happiness. I think certainly being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment. Because people tend to, a natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell you. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis, and then just keep iterating on a loop which says, am I doing something useful for other people? Because that's what a company is supposed to do. A company is just a group of people gathered together to produce a product or service. And a company should only exist if that product or service is truly useful to customers.
How should someone figure out how they can be most useful?
Whatever this thing is that you're trying to create, what would be the utility delta compared to the current state of the art times how many people it would affect? So that's why I think having something that makes a big difference but affects a sort of small to moderate number of people is great, as is something that makes even a small difference but affects a vast number of people. Like the area under the curve. Yeah, exactly. The area under the curve would actually be roughly similar for those two things. I think having a purpose certainly is going to attract the very best talent in the world, because if people can, if there's something that's intrinsically enjoyable and the financial rewards are good, but then also it's something that's going to genuinely change the world, then I think that's a pretty powerful motivator. But I don't think like everything needs to change the world, I mean, honestly, like there's lots of like useful things that people do, and I mean, I think really it should be like a usefulness optimization. Like just say like, is what I'm doing as useful as it could be?
You're talking about the goal of an organization, or
a goal in general, yeah. And just even if something isn't changing the world, if it's making people's lives better, I think that's great. And even if something's like making other people's lives only slightly better, but it's a large number of people, then kind of like the area under the curve is quite good.
This is that mathematical first principles of point utility and number.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I mean, so like one could say like is like some app really making people's lives better? But if it's affecting a lot of people, even in a small way, then yeah, the sort of area is good. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. You're not adding enough.
So our approach is important. Our audience is important. The context in which we find ourselves is important. And so too is the way we structure our messages. It is much easier for humans to understand information when it is structured. But those of us of my age, when we wanted to call somebody on the phone, we actually had to remember a phone number. 10 digits. 10 digits are hard to remember. So what did we do? We put them in a structure. 3, 3, and 4. That's how we remembered. That's what I mean by a structure. The information is put in a way that it makes it easy, not only for you as a speaker, but also for the audience to remember.
I've had a long career in multiple industries. If you list my sins, I sound like the worst person on earth. But if you put those against the things I've done right, it makes much more sense. The value of beauty and inspiration is very much underrated, no question. But I'm not trying to be anyone's savior. That is not I'm just trying to think about the future and not be sad. For me, it's simply this is something that is important to get done, and we should just keep doing it or die trying. And I don't need a source of strength.
So quitting is not even like...
It's not in my nature. And I don't care about optimism or pessimism. That we're going to get it done. Tesla was under the most relentless short seller attack in the history of the stock market. Tesla was the most shorted stock in the history of stock markets. So, this was affecting our ability to hire people. It was affecting our ability to sell cars. Yeah, it was terrible. They wanted Tesla to die so bad they could taste it.
Well, most of them have paid the price.
Yes. Where are they now? Just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. All those things improve the odds of success. So when people tell me like, well, what can you do to encourage entrepreneurs to start companies? I'm like, if you need encouragement, don't start a company. We basically messed up almost every aspect of the Model 3 production line. From cells to packs to motors, body line, the paint shop, final assembly, everything. Everything was messed up. I lived in the Fremont and Nevada factories for 3 years, fixing that production line, running around like a maniac through every part of that factory, living with the team. Yeah. I slept on the floor so that the team who was going through a hard time could see me on the floor. That they knew that I was not in some ivory tower. Whatever pain they experienced, I had it more. I mean, there wasn't any other way to make it work. There were 3 years of hell. 2017, 18, and 19 were 3 years. Longest period of excruciating pain in my life. There wasn't any other way, and we barely made it. We were on the ragged edge of bankruptcy the entire time.
Do you feel that this challenge of figuring out the new way of manufacturing, you actually have an edge now, that it's different, that you've figured out how to do this?
At this point, I think I know more about manufacturing than anyone currently alive on Earth. Yeah. I can tell you how every damn part in that car is made. But I'm not afraid of dying. I think it will come as a relief. So,
although you may not be able to see the vision of SpaceX come true in your life.
Well, I'd like to live long enough to see that.
Being at a net worth of 230 billion, roughly, being perceived as the richest person. Do you know John Law?
I don't know.
John Law used to be the richest person on earth 300 years ago.
Okay.
He was a poker player, a gambler. He was the biggest art collector on earth, so a lot of superlatives.
Wow.
In the end, he went bankrupt.
What? It's a pretty far to fall.
Did you ever thought about that option, that something could go wrong and that you could one day lose everything?
I mean, there's been many times where I expected to lose everything. Not, I mean, who starts a car company and a rocket company expecting them to succeed? Certainly not me. I thought they both had less than a 10% chance of success. Like, if I go bankrupt, fine, whatever. I don't care.
So many people so many young people actually from across the globe. If you have an advice to them, young people globally who want to be like Elon Musk, what's your advice to them?
I think that probably they shouldn't want to be.
You?
I think it sounds better than it is. Yeah, it's not as much fun being me as you'd think. It could be worse for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard starting a company. I mean, you have to basically be prepared to work constantly, from when you wake up to when you go to sleep. You have to be willing to deal with a lot of difficult problems and thorny problems. You have to be willing to deal with an enormous amount of stress. And you just got to push yourself super, super hard. I wouldn't recommend it for most people.
No.
Try to be useful. Do things that are useful to your fellow human beings, to the world. It's very hard to be useful. Very hard. Are you contributing more than you consume? Try to have a positive net contribution to society. I think that's the thing to aim for. Not to try to be sort of a leader for the sake of being a leader or whatever. A lot of times, the people you want as leaders are the people who don't want to be leaders. So, if you can live a useful life, that is a good life. A life worth having lived. I would just encourage people to use the mental tools of physics and apply them broadly in life. SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and Boring Company are philanthropy. If you say philanthropy is love of humanity, they are philanthropy. Tesla is accelerating sustainable energy. This is a love of philanthropy. SpaceX is trying to ensure the long-term survival of humanity with multi-planet species. This is love of humanity. Neuralink is to help solve brain injuries and existential risk with AI, love of humanity. Boring Company is trying to solve traffic, which is hell for most people, and that also is love of humanity. I'd encourage people to read a lot of books. Just basically try to ingest as much information as you can, and try to also just develop a good general knowledge. So you at least have like a rough lay of the land of the knowledge landscape. Try to learn a little bit about a lot of things. Because you might not know what you're really interested in. How would you know what you're really interested in if you at least aren't doing a peripheral exploration of broadly of the knowledge landscape? And you talk to people from different walks of life and different industries and professions and skills and occupations. Just try to learn as much as possible. And search for meaning.
Isn't the whole thing a search for meaning?
Yeah, what's the meaning of life and all, But just generally, like I said, I would encourage people to read broadly in many different subject areas and then try to find something where there's an overlap of your talents and what you're interested in. So people may be good at something, or they may have skill at a particular thing, but they don't like doing it. Mm-hmm. So you want to try to find a thing where that's a good combination of the things that you're inherently good at, but you also like doing.
When you had that third failure in a row, did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated. essentially, like the longer you do anything, the more mistakes that you will make cumulatively, which if you sum up those mistakes will sound like I'm the worst predictor ever. But for example, for Tesla vehicle growth, I said I think we're doing 50%, and we've done 80%.
Yes.
But they don't mention that one. I'm not sure what my exact track record is on predictions. They're more optimistic than pessimistic, but they're not all optimistic. Some of them are exceeded, probably more are later, but they do come true. It's very rare that they do not come true. I mean, I don't aim to disrupt for the sake of disrupting. It's more like there's thinking about what set of actions are most likely to lead to a better future. And so, in order for, one of the things, obviously, in order for humanity to have a compelling future for civilization is that we must have a clear path to a sustainable energy future. That's one of the things that I think everyone would agree with. I'm not someone who would tend to sort of demonize oil and gas, to be clear. This is necessary right now, or civilization could not function. So I do think we actually need, and actually at this time, I think we actually need more oil and gas, not less. But simultaneously moving as fast as we can to a sustainable energy economy. But I was living in the factory in Fremont and the one in Nevada for 3 years straight. That was my primary residence. Not kidding, literally.
Did you keep the couch?
I actually slept in a couch at one point in a tent on the roof. And then, but for a while there, I was just sleeping under my desk, which is out in the open in the factory, and for an important reason. And it was damn uncomfortable sleeping on that floor. And always, when I woke up, I'd smell like metal dust. Yeah, but actually, I stopped using the couch because there's a little conference room and a couch there. I stopped using the couch. I just slept on the floor under my desk, so during shift change, the entire team could see me. And that's important because, like, the team, like, if they think like the sort of their leader is off somewhere having a good time, drinking Mai Tais on a tropical island. The thing is that since the team could see me sleeping on the floor during shift change with nothing, they knew I was there, and that made a huge difference. And then they gave it their all.
What kind of characteristics does an entrepreneur need or have to be someone like you?
Well, I think certainly you need to be very driven and have a high pain threshold.
Elon, you are reported by Forbes and everyone else as now, the world's richest person.
That's not a sovereign. I think it's fair to say that if somebody is like the king or de facto king of a country, they're wealthier than I am.
So, but it's just harder to measure. But what people do, so $300 billion, I mean, your net worth on any given day is rising or falling by several $1 billion. How insane is that?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you handle that psychologically? There aren't many people in the world who have to even think about that.
I actually don't think about that too much, but the thing that is actually more difficult, and that does make sleeping difficult, is that every good hour or even minute of thinking about Tesla and SpaceX has such a big effect on the company that I really try to work as much as possible, to the edge of sanity, basically, because Tesla's getting to the point where we'll get to the point later this year where every high quality minute of thinking is $1 million to impact on Tesla. One of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. Like you want something to be true, even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell you. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
You know? So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. You guys are the magicians of the 21st century. You know, don't let anything hold you back. Imagination is the limit, and go out there and create some magic.
What Elon has to say about how he takes risks.
No, I literally just try to use a scientific method, frankly, and consider the what is the importance of the outcome, and what is one risking in order to achieve that outcome. And but like I said, if the outcome is important enough, even if the probability of success is low, one must, I think, still do it. In my view, some things are very important, and in order to have a good future, and if we don't do them, well, then we're in big trouble. And so, and then how much of a risk really is it? Because if we don't take those actions, we won't have a good future. And I think the riskiest thing would be no action. Put a lot of stock and certainly have a lot of respect for someone who puts in an honest day's work to do useful things. And just generally to have not a zero-sum mindset, or have more of a grow the pie mindset. If you sort of say when I see people perhaps including some very smart people kind of taking an attitude of doing things that seem like morally questionable, it's often because they have at a base sort of axiomatic level a zero-sum mindset, and they, without realizing it, they don't realize they have a zero-sum mindset, or at least they don't realize it consciously. And so if you have a zero-sum mindset, then the only way to get ahead is by taking things from others. If it's if the pie is fixed, then the only way to have more pie is to take someone else's pie. But this is false. Obviously the pie has grown dramatically over time, the economic pie. So in reality, you can have to overuse this analogy. We can have there's a lot of pie.
Yeah,
pie is not fixed.
Yes.
So you really want to make sure you're not operating without realizing it from a zero-sum mindset, where the only way to get ahead is to take things from others. Then that's going to result in you trying to take things from others, which is not good. It's much better to work on adding to the economic pie. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same. I said, tell me the story of your life, and the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question, I think, is very important, because the people that really solved the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. And the people that pretended to solve the problem, they can maybe go one level and then they get stuck.
Are you happy at the moment?
I think there's degrees of love, but certainly for one to be fully happy, I think you have to be happy in work and happy in love. I suppose I'm medium happy. There are degrees of happiness.
Can love for projects, for work, compensate love among people?
I think love of work, in my experience, can at best make one halfway happy.
What was your biggest challenge in life?
One of the biggest challenges, I think, is making sure you have a corrective feedback loop, and then maintaining that corrective feedback loop over time, even when people want to tell you exactly what you want to hear. That's very difficult. Confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment People take too many things they assume too many things to be true without sufficient basis in that belief. It's very important that people closely analyze what is supposed to be true. Try to say, let's analyze things from first principles, not by analogy or not by convention. I also had sort of a slight existential crisis because I was trying to figure out what does it all mean? Like, what's the purpose of things? And I came to the conclusion that if we can advance the knowledge of the world, if we can do things that expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we're better able to ask the right questions and become more enlightened, and that's really the only way forward. And this was against the advice of pretty much everyone I talked to. One friend made me sit down and watch a bunch of videos of rockets blowing up. Let me tell you, he wasn't far wrong. Tough going there in the beginning because I'd never built anything physical. I mean, I'd built like little model rockets as a kid and that kind of thing, but I'd never had a company that built anything physical. So I'd got to figure out how to do all these things and bring together the right team of people. And so we did all that and then failed 3 times. I think also people tend to overweight risk on a personal level. Let's say you're young and you're just coming out of college or coming out of high school or whatever. What do you risk? You know, you're not going to stop. People should be less risk averse when there's not much at risk. I wouldn't say I'm fearless. In fact, I think I feel fear quite strongly. If what we're doing is, what I'm doing is, I think is important enough, then I just override the fear. Trying to build a company and have it succeed is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Sort of quite exciting for the first several months starting a company, and then reality sets in. Things don't go as well as planned. Customers aren't signing up. The technology or the product isn't working as well as you thought, and then that can sometimes be compounded by a recession. It can be very, very painful for several years. So I think, frankly, starting a company advises people to have a high pain tolerance for this. Like, there are many more ways to fail than to succeed. Failure is not a big stigma. So it's like if you try hard and it doesn't work out, that's okay. Learn from that and do another company, and it's not a big deal. I think the thing that drives me is that I want to be able to think about the future and feel good about that, to be inspired by what is likely to happen, and to look forward to the next day. The difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that can actually have merit. And that is a really difficult thing to tell you. Can you tell the difference between those two things? Very rigorous in your self-analysis. If you assume things are true by convention, which is actually what most people do, then it's difficult to gain insight into how things can be bettered. You want to make sure that the underlying premises are valid and applicable, and then in reaching a conclusion, that the conclusion you're reaching is necessarily driven by the underlying premises and the interconnection between those premises. When I was young, I didn't really know what I was going to do when I got older. I read a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, which said that a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that's really true. If you go back, say 300 years, the things that we take for granted today you'd be burned at the stake for. I think it actually goes beyond that, because there are many things that we take for granted today that weren't even imagined in times past. They weren't even in the realm of magic.
You had that third failure in a row. Did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. This is the first time in the 4.5 billion year history of Earth that it's been possible to extend life beyond Earth. Before this, it was not possible. How long will this window be open? It may be open for a long time, or it may be open for a short time. I think it would be wise to assume that it is open for a short time. Every waking hour, that's the thing I would say. Okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year. Now is the time to take risks. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold. You won't regret it.
Work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. And like one of the most difficult choices I have ever faced in life was in 2008. Maybe $30 million left, or $30 or $40 million left in 2008. I had two choices. I could put it all into one company, and then the other company would definitely die, or split it between the two companies. But if I split it between the two companies, then both might die. And when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating something, and building something, it's like a child. Am I going to let one starve to death? I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I split the money between the two. Fortunately, thank goodness, they both came through.
When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. We're doing these things that seem unlikely to succeed, and we've been fortunate, and at least thus far they have succeeded. You guys are the magicians of the 21st century. Don't let anything hold you back. Imagination is the limit, and go out there and create some magic.